This video discusses sexual abuse and trauma in a non-graphic way. So if this topic is difficult for you, please take care of yourself while watching. For a long time, I wasn't sure about telling my story. But simply put, I just wanted to focus more on the healing than focusing on the pain and confusion that it caused me. I didn't want that to become my identity, so. However, over the years, I found that the more I shared my story, the more people that I was able to help who had also experienced similar tragedies, similar trauma. The story isn't about what someone did to me, but more about what God did for me after. And so I just want to go over a few steps of how I overcame sexual trauma and living with it. Step 1, I acknowledged what happened. For a long time, I had minimized my traumatic experience. I tried to move past it without really facing it. I just tried to bury it, bottom line. I just tried to bury it. Until I had learned healing doesn't begin until I actually admitted what happened to me. And that was hard because as a child, when I did share what took place and no one believed me and it kept happening, I just became numb. I just felt like I couldn't trust anybody. So until I got to the point where, I got to heal this because it's affecting me as I got older. And so I wrote it down, and I didn't share it at the time, but I wrote it down for me so that I could acknowledge that it took place. And with that, the second step was I stopped blaming myself. One of the hardest things was letting go of the shame. I had realized that I had been carrying guilt that didn't even belong to me because I didn't ask for it. And one lesson I want to say here is that shame keeps you stuck. So, healing begins when you stop carrying responsibility for someone else's actions. And that's not just about what I'm talking about in the video. That's anything that you're carrying guilt of, something that you didn't ask for, something that you didn't cause. So I encourage you to just stop blaming yourself. And then, give the responsibility to who it belongs to. The third step was I took my pain to God. And this was actually really good for me because I was able to stop pretending that I was okay. I had, it was really hard for me because, I just, like I said earlier, I just wanted to bury it. But I ended up praying about it. And I prayed to God honestly, like I was fussing, I was cussing in my prayers. Like I wanted it all out of me, out of my system. I wanted that toxicity out because I couldn't understand, and some days I cried, but bit by bit, I had started noticing the shame dissipating. And I had learned also that I didn't have to go to God all perfect and talking with fancy words. No, I came to Him honest, raw, and unfiltered. The next step was journaling. So I started writing, my feelings and thoughts because it helped me process my emotions. I was able to be honest with myself on paper. I also had learned over time how much I had grown when I went back and just, started reading what I had wrote down. It was healing for me. And it's not a real lesson in here. It's just that I want to stress how writing in a journal can become a place where you stop pretending and start healing. Because it's putting that ink down and them tears on that page, that hurt and that pain. That's a healing process. Step 5 was I had stopped looking for my worth in other people. Now, I know many survivors struggle with self-worth. Trauma affected how I viewed relationships, as I talked earlier about trusting. But healing for me meant learning that I had to set boundaries, that I could say no to protect my peace. I can choose relationships that felt safe and respectful. And I will admit that before I got to this point of healing, I was wilding the fuck out. I was, but I had, over time, when I made a decision like I didn't want to live a certain way anymore, I just began realizing my own value. I learned my boundaries, and I also learned that boundaries weren't punishment, but protection. So my last step was I gave myself time. You cannot heal overnight. And some days I felt strong, other days I didn't. I just felt like I was starting over. But I realized that every small step mattered. I chose peace, and that helped me recognize that healing became less about getting over it and more about making daily choices, such as protecting my mental health, letting go of bitterness, all this stuff a little at a time. And then you learn that progress isn't always obvious, but it is still progress. And that goes back to what I said earlier, looking at your growth. And that's, for me, that's why I think journaling is important. So you can see how far you have come. So if you've experienced sexual abuse, I want you to know this. What happened to you matters. The pain is real, but it doesn't have to be the final chapter of your story. Healing is not going to be quick. It is not linear, but it's possible. My life is proof that even after deep wounds, peace, joy, and purpose can grow in your life again. So just a quick recap, the steps that I did take was I acknowledged what happened. I stopped blaming myself. Number 3, I took my pain to God. I started journaling. Number 5, I learned my worth. And number 6, I made a conscious decision to give myself time to heal. And so I really hope that, this helps someone out there who's dealing with this. And to just know that you're not alone going through all this. So if this did help, I want to remind you to encourage yourself, nourish yourself, accept yourself so that you can heal, rise, and become. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Share it with someone who you think may need it. And subscribe if you feel like this is going to be a channel that you can get with. And also, I'm going to throw in my plug. AnyaBeautyByDesign.com. I wish you all the best. And I pray that you will continue to heal and become the best version of yourself. In Jesus' name. All right, y'all. Holla.